Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy, Pigskin Pete. Happy Monday to everybody. So every single year before the season starts, I do a preseason top 10 list. And then what I do throughout the season is once a week, I'll adjust it based on what happened the previous week. And that will go on for the entire season all the way up till the playoffs and the bowl games. Now, obviously, this year is going to be a lot different, right? We have two of the major Power 5 conferences bowing out, the Big Ten and the Pac-12. So I had to adjust my top preseason top 10 list to only encompass the people that are playing, which would be the Big 12, the ACC, the SEC, and of course, Notre Dame, which is also an ACC team this year. We will not get into that. We don't have enough time, and I don't have the patience to get into that. But basically, Notre Dame is a Power 5 school this year, not an independent team. All right, so anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this. This is not as easy as you would think it would be because you have teams like Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Penn State, all these teams that are possibly top 10 teams that aren't. So what you'll see in here in my list is a bunch of teams, or at least a couple of teams, that I would not maybe even had in the top 15 if it weren't for the Big Ten and the Pac-12 not playing this year. So anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and get to it. Team number 10, Texas. Yeah, Texas. They thought they were back last year. Didn't work out so well for them. But honestly, though, I mean, they have one of the better quarterbacks in the country coming back, one of the most experienced quarterbacks by a long shot. I mean, Sam Ehlinger, how long has he been there? 15 years? This guy 40 years old? He's like Tom Brady's age already. But anyway, yeah, he's a very experienced quarterback. He's a very good quarterback. He's even on some people's Heisman lists, even though I don't think that's going to happen. Also, Texas, with the Big 12 only having a conference schedule like the rest of the country, and they have one non-conference game, I think, this year too, but it's not against a Power 5 team, I don't think. I think most of the Big 12 teams are playing, a lower class conference. Anyway, Tom Herman has done a great job recruiting in his, what has he been there, 4 or 5 years now? And so this is the time when you start seeing the return on the investment as far as recruiting goes. And so they have great running backs. They have great skill players. I think their defense is going to be one of the better defenses in the Big 12 this year, which they normally are, actually. I mean, they're not great, but they're better than most Big 12 teams on defense. So I expect Texas to be pretty good. There's a chance. I mean, look, who's the only person in their way is Oklahoma. And vice versa. The only team in Oklahoma's way is Texas. And we'll talk about Oklahoma later. I think Texas is to be a very good team, so I have them in my top 10. I probably wouldn't have had them in my top 10 had the Big Ten and the Pac-12 been playing. That's one of the teams I was mentioning. All right, number 9. Another Texas team, Texas A&M out of the SEC. Another situation kind of like Sam Ehlinger, right? Kellen Mond. This guy's been there 15 years too. How old is Kellen Mond? Kellen Mond's got to be almost 25 years old. No kidding. Yeah, or maybe he's 23 or something. Anyway, Kellen Mond's kind of a streaky player. When he's on, he's on. When he's off, he's off. And you don't know which Kellen Mond you're going to get from week to week. I'm not a huge Jimbo Fisher fan, but Jimbo Fisher has always been an elite recruiter. He was an elite recruiter when he was at Florida State. He's an elite recruiter at Texas A&M. And what's he going into? His 3rd season now? So he's getting to the point where his recruiting is going to start to pay off. Kellen Mond, if he can be consistent, can be one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC. Biggest problem for Texas A&M is the division they play in is tough. And usually they have some pretty tough out-of-conference games. The good news for Texas A&M this year is the past two, Jimbo's first 2 seasons there, one of their out-of-conference games was Clemson, 2 years in a row. They don't have Clemson this year. But they still have Alabama and they still have LSU. And then whoever I haven't looked at their schedule. I don't know who they drew out of the East this year. But anyway, needless to say, Texas A&M is loaded talent-wise, and Jimbo Fisher is no slouch of a coach either. I think they'll finally start to put things together. It's going to be hard to move ahead of Alabama, Georgia, mainly Alabama, Georgia, maybe LSU and the SEC, Florida. But anyway, solid team all the way around. Number 8 on the list, Auburn. So Auburn's coming in at number 8. Not a lot of people are talking about Auburn this year. And this is a team sort of like Texas that if it weren't for the Big Ten and the Pac-12 not being in the picture, I wouldn't even have Auburn in my top 10. I'd probably have them in the top 15, but not in the top 10. They're benefiting from these other two conferences not being in it. Bo Nix coming back for his second season, so he'll be better. Auburn has a big question mark at running back. I'm not saying they don't have good running backs, but I mean, you tell me how good they are. You haven't seen them play. They don't have a single starter at running back that's played at the start of the football game before. So we don't know how good their running backs are going to be. Now, I can tell you one thing. Their defensive line is going to be stacked and loaded like it always is. Their defense as a whole is going to be great like it always is. So the biggest question mark, I think, is running back. They're going to have some great wide receivers. It's going to be all of the pressure is going to be on Bo Nix to step his game up from year 1 to year 2. And I'm not quite honestly sold on how great of a quarterback he is anyway. He showed some flashes of being really good last year, as a young guy. It's time to take that next step up. So either way you look at it, Auburn's a very good team, and they have a very outside chance, but a chance of competing for an SEC championship this year, which is pretty much the same for every year with them, quite honestly. All right. Coming in at number 7 on my preseason top 10 list, Notre Dame. Notre Dame's always been solid. Brian Kelly's done a really good job there. If you look at the 2 or 3 previous coaches before him, at least 2, they sort of had things going in the wrong direction. Brian Kelly has stabled the ship, and they're not recruiting like top 5 or even top 10 every year, but they have solid recruiting classes. That's one of those schools that's just hard to recruit to because of a lot of things, but location's one of them, and academic requirements are another. Also, it's a Catholic school, which I think unfortunately turns some people off. They feel like, I don't know what they think. They think they're indoctrinating people there or whatever it is. It's just, it's not that way. But what Notre Dame does have going for it is tradition, and that's the biggest draw. It's one of the, if not the most recognizable name in all of football at any level. Certainly in college football. If you go around the world, if you go to Australia and ask them who Texas Tech is, they might not know. I guarantee you they know who Notre Dame is. That's a huge feather in their cap. Notre Dame joins the ACC for 1 year this year. Ian Book is one of the better quarterbacks in the country. I have seen him on a couple of Heisman lists, even though I don't think they're going to win the Heisman. Now, Notre Dame has a couple of trap games this year. Obviously, they play Clemson in November, but that's in South Bend. They have to go on the road to Pitt, which I think is a trap game for them. And then the biggest trap for them is towards the end of the season at North Carolina on a Friday night. This is a problem because the ACC does these Friday night games every single year. And every single year it seems like a highly ranked team goes on the road to an unranked team on Friday night and loses. Almost every year. It's happened to Clemson. It's happened to Miami. I forget who it happened to last year. It happens all the time. So watch out, Notre Dame. Anyway, having said all that, Notre Dame's going to have an amazing offensive line, a couple of elite tight ends, some really good receivers, some really good running backs. I think Ian Book's going to be very solid if he can stay healthy. Notre Dame is a team that can knock off anybody in the country on any given day, including Clemson. So, unfortunately, I won't be going to that game. They canceled my tickets that I bought. Anyway. All right. Coming in at number 6 on my top 10 preseason list, LSU. Oh, Pigskin Pete, how could you have LSU? That you just still got sour grapes about them whooping Clemson's ass back in January, don't you? No. Listen, they were great. They were great. But they've lost half of their team to the NFL. Literally half of their starting team went to the NFL. Like 11 guys. And Joe Burrow is one of them. And on top of that, to make matters worse, Joe Brady, the passing game coordinator / offensive coordinator, whatever title they gave him, is also gone off to my Carolina Panthers in the NFL. Now, LSU's still going to be loaded. They're still going to have great players all over the field. Really excited to see what this young quarterback it looks like. But there's no shame when you lose that many people off the roster and one of the key people on the coaching staff all in the same offseason. Taking a step back from number 1 to number 5 or 6 is not really that much of a step back. All right. 2021 LSU is probably going to be competing for a national title again. I just don't see that this year. I don't see it this year. Anyway, still loaded team, great team. And of course, Coach Orgeron is one of my favorite coaches in all of college football. How can you not like that guy? All right. Coming in at number 5 on my preseason top 10 list. Florida. A lot of people have Florida winning the SEC East. I've even seen projections of them going to the playoff. Now, I don't see that. But if Florida can find a way to win the East and get past Georgia and make it to the SEC championship game with 0 or 1 loss, then they will have a chance to make it in the playoffs because there is no Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Oregon to compete with them for that 4th spot. So conceivably, there could easily be 2 SEC teams in this year, and one of them could even have 2 losses. That's very conceivable if you look at the way this could play out this year. So, whatever it was, a couple of weeks ago before the Big Ten and the Pac-12, said we're out, Audi 5000, I would have said Florida has a little to no chance to make the play. I mean, a small chance, 10% chance to make the playoffs. I think at this point, it's gone way up. It's gone up to 30%. Problem is they still got to get past Georgia. Felipe Frankfurter Franks hauled ass over there to Arkansas or wherever he went. Still got a couple of serviceable. Kyle Trask is the number 1 guy. But anyway, Florida's going to be a very good team. Don't get me wrong. Hell, I have them at number 5. Don't complain about that. But you still got to prove to me that you can get past Georgia. And I'm not sure that this is the year to do that. Prove me wrong, Florida. That's all you got to do. Just prove me wrong. No big deal. They are capable of doing it. Just don't think this is their year. All right. Number 4 on my preseason top 10 list. Oklahoma. Oklahoma is going to do what Oklahoma does. And what does Oklahoma do all the time? They win 11 or 12 games. They win the Big 12. They have a Heisman caliber quarterback, Heisman either winning the Heisman or runner-up. They make it to the first round of the playoffs, and then they get obliterated by whoever team they play in the first round of the playoffs is. And I think that's the same thing you're going to see happen this year. Why would I think any differently? Their offense is going to be one of the best in America. Spencer Rattler, this quarterback they got starting this year. I'm not more excited about any player in all of college football to watch than I am Spencer Rattler. If you take Clemson off the table, obviously I'm excited about watching Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne and Amari, obviously I'm excited about them. Outside of Clemson, Spencer Rattler's the guy I've got my eye on. There's a bunch of players I'm looking forward to, but he's got my interest peaked. If you don't know this kid, he's not as mobile as a Kyler Murray or certainly not a Jalen Hurts. He's got a better arm than Jalen Hurts does. I'd say he's more comparable to Baker Mayfield. I don't know, but I think he's bigger than Baker Mayfield. He's a bigger version of Baker Mayfield. That's the best way I could put it. But his arm talent is ridiculous. He reminds me a lot of Patrick Mahomes with these crazy throws, sidearm throws, behind his back throws. I mean, the guy's just he's off the charts as far as arm talent goes. Off the charts. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him play in that offense because obviously Oklahoma, wide receiver position is going to be ridiculous. Tight end's going to be ridiculous. They always got good running backs. Offensive line's always really good. So Spencer Rattler, even though it's his first year starting, he has a chance to really do something special and put up a ton of points. Biggest problem on Oklahoma is it's nothing new here. It's the defense. So we'll see what they look like this year. They were improved last year from the year before. If they take another step up this year in improvement, that'd be, I guess, impressive. But again, Oklahoma's only real threat is Texas. The winner of that game the Red River shootout, the Red River rivalry, whatever the hell they're calling it in 2020 without offending anybody. The winner of that game is probably going to win the Big 12 and represent the Big 12 in the playoffs. I mean, that's my best guess. Oklahoma at number 4. Very good team. Very good team. Number 3 on my preseason top 10 list. Georgia. A lot of people are like, why would you have Georgia so high? They choke every year. They got an ACC quarterback coming in. They got a new offensive coordinator. You know, can you name even one guy on their defense that's going to be up for awards at the end of the year? This is all the shit that I've heard when I talk about how good Georgia is. All right, well, here's what I want you to do. I want you to make a preseason top 10 list with the teams that are playing this year, and then tell me, who would you put ahead of Georgia? Other than, I'm going to go ahead and put up the 2 I have ahead of Georgia. I mean, we all know who they are. Alabama and Clemson. Outside of Alabama and Clemson, who would you put ahead of Georgia? Maybe you could make a case to put Oklahoma ahead of Georgia, but not really. I mean, Georgia definitely has more depth on both sides of the ball than Oklahoma does. Oklahoma's been a one-sided team for a long time now. Georgia's going to have one of the best defenses in the country, if not the best defense on the country on paper this year. They're going to have a solid offensive line like they always do. They always have good running backs. I know they're going to have at least a couple of elite level wide receivers. And on top of that, they're going to have a guy that they've never had before, a Jamie Newman, a guy that can move and throw. And they brought in the big question is, can they change their philosophy around to fit Jamie Newman's skill set? Well, they brought in a new offensive coordinator just to do that. And then they went out and got Jamie Newman. So that tells you where their head is. They wouldn't have made these moves if they weren't planning on changing their offense to the 21st century. Now, it's up for Jamie Newman and the offensive coordinator and everything and the coaches to execute the plan correctly. But certainly, I don't think you can name 3 teams better than Georgia in 2020. I just don't think you can. I don't see another team on this list that I would feel better about putting ahead of Georgia in a preseason list. Now, that could change. Georgia could drop to 4 or 5 during the season sometime, depending on some of these teams win games and Georgia loses a game, whatever. Right now, there's no way I can put them any higher, or any lower, rather, than 3. Now, Alabama and Clemson. You could flip-flop these 2 if you want. I know, oh, look at this Clemson homer. He's got Clemson at number 1. I just got done telling you at the beginning of the video. If Ohio State was in this year, I would have had them at number 1. And still, you can flip-flop Alabama and Clemson if you want to in this list. It wouldn't hurt my feelings. But here's the reason I have Clemson number 1. What does Clemson not have in common with Alabama, Georgia, and Oklahoma, the other 3 in the top 4? Well, Alabama's got Mac Jones, first-year starter. Hot shot behind him, Bryce Young, who's never started the game in college. Freshman, true freshman. Georgia's got Jamie Newman coming in, very experienced, but never played in this offense before. Never played at Georgia before. First-year starter for them. Oklahoma, first-year starter in Spencer Rattler. So Clemson's returning probably the best quarterback in college football. You could probably make, if you're an Ohio State fan, you can say, oh, no, Justin Fields is the best quarterback in college football. Justin Fields isn't playing this year. So the argument is completely moot anyways. Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback in football this year. And the most experienced out of all these guys. All these, top 4 team guys. Travis Etienne might be the best running back in the country. Clemson's defensive line is going to be stacked and loaded this year. So, wide receiver core is ridiculous, even with Ross and Higgins. With Higgins being gone and with Ross out. Still, ridiculous wide receiver core. So, that's why I have Clemson number 1. Won't matter. It won't matter because Clemson is the team to beat. Alabama's the team to beat. Georgia's team to beat. These top 4 are the teams to beat. If you want a shot being in the playoffs, you got to get past all 4 of those teams at some point. Good luck with that. 4 elite teams right there. There you guys have it. There's my top 10. Texas at 10. Texas A&M at 9. Auburn at 8. Notre Dame at 7. LSU at 6, Florida at 5, Oklahoma at 4, Georgia at 3, Alabama at 2, and Clemson at 1. Let me know your thoughts about this. If you have some flip-flopped or you're mad about one of my rankings here or whatever, let me know in the comment section whether you agree or disagree with me. Hopefully, I don't have to edit this list because another conference like the Big 12 or ACC quits the season. That would be terrible. Anyway, see you guys soon. Thanks for stopping in. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button on your way out. Pigskin Pete is checking out.